So namaste everybody, and welcome to this first part of Atisha's advice from the heart. So it's really good to be back on Facebook Live again. It's been quite a time. I've been busy doing so many other projects that I haven't had chance to actually do a Facebook Live series. So now we're going to be looking at Atisha's advice and going through each week. So I don't know how many weeks it'll take us, but let's see. We've got all the time in the world now. So Atisha was a Buddhist, Indian Buddhist master, and he was studying in Nalanda. Now you'll have to excuse my voice because I have a really sore throat today. So he was studying in Nalanda, and he went to Tibet to reintroduce Buddhism back in Tibet. So Buddhism had been there, but then a king who had come along was anti-Buddhist, and then Buddhism left. So then Atisha went back to reintroduce Buddhism back into Tibet. So he stayed there for around 2 years. We're talking about the 11th century here. He stayed there for 2 years and taught different practices and made Buddhism accessible to everybody in Tibet. When he decided to leave and go back to Nalanda, he was asked to do this teaching, give a final teaching. And he said, actually, I've told you everything. Everything has already been taught and written down. But they kept saying to him, please, please teach me. So then he left this heartfelt advice. So this advice is direct from his heart. This means an awful lot to Atisha. So we're going to go through, as you know, 3 or 4 verses each week. And then if you have any questions, you can type them in the comment and I'll get round to answering them later on. So the first 3 verses are setting the scene. They're about our teachings, how we can approach the teachings, and who's there to help us. So the first verse says, friends, until you obtain the awakened mind, the spiritual teacher is indispensable. Therefore, rely upon a spiritual guide. So he's saying that until your mind is awakened, we need help. We need a spiritual guide. So our mind being awakened, some people call it enlightenment, some people call it moksha, nirvana, liberation, whatever it is. But here it's called awakened mind. And actually, I prefer to call it the awakened mind because that's exactly what it is. When our mind is awakened, we start to see things clearly instead of seeing things the way that we think they should be or the way that we want them to be. We actually start seeing things more clearly. So to get to that point of having an awakened mind, having a mind that actually sees things as they are. You see, at the moment we don't see things the way they are. We see them through our own eyes. We see them through our own concepts, our biases, and our perspectives. There are roughly 7 billion people on the planet here, and there are 7 billion people that all see the world differently. We all have our own way of seeing the world, and probably none of them are true. When your mind is awakened, when your mind is opened up, it gives you that opportunity to actually see the world as it is. So that's what the aim of any path is. That's what the aim of doing a spiritual path is, to awaken that mind. So when we are trying to awaken our mind, we need a spiritual guide, a spiritual teacher. So whether you call it a spiritual friend or a teacher, a mentor, or even a guru, we need somebody to actually show us the path, not to walk down that path, but to show us this is the path, and help us along the path. Whenever we reach obstacles, that spiritual friend, that guide, is going to help you go around those obstacles. So it's so important that we have a guide to show us the way, to show us how we can actually carry on walking down this path and what we're going to experience along the path. But really need to make it clear here that a teacher is just that. It's just about showing you the way. So it's about somebody who's helping you. So I had a teacher once who used to say to all of his students, do you want a teacher to lean on, or do you want a teacher to learn from? And he would say, if you want to learn from a teacher, I'm your man. If you want to lean on the teacher, then I'm not here for that. And so many people lean on their teachers. So many people put their teachers up there as though they're some sort of God. And by doing that, you're putting yourself down there. So already you're putting this gap between you and the teacher. And then it's difficult then to learn because you're looking at them and thinking they know everything and they're so special and they're such wonderful people. So you're probably scared to ask questions, and if you have any doubts, you're probably scared to actually articulate those doubts. So we shouldn't put a teacher on a pedestal. A teacher and a student should be on the same level, and you should go to the teacher for learning and not leaning. So the first of the verses is about getting yourself a spiritual teacher, a spiritual guide that you can depend on, you can rely on, that can help you find your way to walk down that path. So, in the same vein, then the second verse says, until you realize ultimate truth, listening is indispensable. So, therefore, listen to the instructions of the spiritual guide. So, now he's telling that we need to listen. We get ourselves a guide who are going to help us to awaken our mind. And then we need to listen carefully to that guide because those teachings are indispensable. Without those teachings, we're not going to be able to walk a path. And until we realize ultimate truth, then it means that we're never going to be able to see the world as it is. So, ultimate truth is about emptiness, it's about understanding that nothing in this world has its own inherent nature. So, I don't really want to go into that because that's quite deep. But what they're saying here is that until you've reached that level of fully understanding emptiness, of fully understanding the ultimate truth, so we live in the relative truth. This is the world around us, is the relative truth, where we need each other, where we can see each other, where we think that we're solid and permanent, where we get attached and we have our desires and we cause ourselves all this emotional and psychological suffering. That's the relative world. When we reach the ultimate world, then okay, we can dispense with the teacher because we've reached where we want to go. We can then become the teacher. But until then, we really need to listen to the teachings and not just listen to them. We need to practice them. And that's exactly what the third verse is talking about. Since you cannot obtain an awakened mind merely by understanding the teachings, practiced earnestly with understanding. So, what it's saying here is that we can't reach an awakened mind, we can't reach in that ultimate truth until we've actually put those teachings into practice. So, it is so important that we have ourselves a teacher. We listen to those teachings and then we meditate on the teachings, clear up any doubts we might have, and then we start to implement those teachings. So these three verses are just setting the stage ready for us to go further into his words of advice. But Atisha decided to start off talking about teachers and listening to the teaching and then putting them into practice. So when you have a teacher, the best thing you can do, the best form of respect that you can show this teacher is to by putting his teachings into practice. It isn't about lying prostrated on the floor in front of him or touching the feet or making offerings. I mean, all these are fine, but they're not actually what we should be looking for. The teacher wants you to listen carefully and try to implement those teachings. So don't try to be the teacher. When the teacher is talking to you, that is his path. That is the path that worked for him. It may not work for you. So there may be actual times when, you need more than one teacher. And for me, I think that it's fine to have more than one teacher. I know that many people want just the one teacher and they follow every word, but then that is more about religion than it is about spirituality. Religion is about following somebody else's path and following their words and listening, and it's about belief. Whereas spirituality is about listening about to the teachers and thinking about their practice, trying to implement it, but trying to implement it in a way that works for you. So it isn't about belief, it's about experience. It's about trying these things out. It's about seeing what works for you. We're all completely different. I can't sit here and say that I've got the answer and follow me and you'll become awakened and you'll realize emptiness and ultimate truth. I can't say that because I know it's not true. Some of you, maybe, that follow my path, you will reach there, maybe. But many of you won't because you're different. So the teacher isn't about that. When you find your spiritual friend, it isn't about, just holding on to them. They're my teacher, or boasting about them, or getting all proud because he's my teacher. All of that is actually taking you away from the teachings. So there's no need to be proud about your teacher. There's no need to get your ego involved. Try to find a good teacher, and a good teacher is somebody that actually does what they say. There are many teachers that do very good talking, but then don't put it into action. Unfortunately, there are many more teachers that actually do the teaching and they implement their own teaching. So it's really important that when you look for a teacher, you look for somebody that isn't just maybe the nicest dressed or he says the best words or he comes across great on YouTube. That's not what it's about. Some of the best teachers are terrible on YouTube and they're not in the best clothes. And it doesn't matter because it's the teachings that we're looking at there. So try to follow the teachings as much as you can. But while you're following, you need to meditate on them. So get a teacher, listen to the teachings, then if you have any doubts, clear them up, meditate on those teachings. By meditating on the teaching, you're giving yourself time to let it really go deep. When we listen to the teachings, that is knowledge. That's all that is. They were just knowledge. We need to turn that knowledge into wisdom. And the only way that we can start to turn knowledge into wisdom is to meditate on it and think about those teachings and just allow those teachings to sink in and become part of who you are. That's wisdom. If you can just repeat what the teacher has told you like a parrot, then what's the point in that? I mean, we can read a book. We don't need to have teachings that somebody are just repeating verbatim. We need teachers who are talking from their experience. And when you've got that knowledge, again, don't just hold on to that knowledge and just say, yeah, I know all about that. I had a friend once when I wrote my first book, and part of the first book was the Four Noble Truths. And I said to him, "What do you think of the Four Noble Truths?" And he said, "Oh, yeah, I know. It's this, it's this, it's this, it's this." And then I started asking him questions, and he couldn't go any deeper. He could repeat what the first noble truth is, what the second, the third, and the fourth is. But then when you get into the substance, he had no idea what the substance was. That's no use to us. That is just knowledge. Knowledge is a starting point. Knowledge is most definitely not the end point. The end point is taking it on board, making it who I am, making it the person that I am. When we say, yes, I understand impermanence, but yeah, you understand it on an intellectual, on a knowledge level. That's not going to help you because that is great when we're talking about it, but when we're not talking about it, we don't do it. So we need to be turning that knowledge into wisdom. And wisdom means we start to live our life like everything is impermanent. So the way to do that is to meditate on the teachings. Once you've meditated on the teachings, then you need to start to implement them so you get the experience. And that for me is the big difference between religion and spirituality. I personally am not a religious person. I'm not a person who believes things. I never have, even from a really young age. I like to check it out. I like to see exactly where does that fit into the world? Is that relevant for today? How can I use that? If I use that, in what way and what would be the outcome? For me, those are all the questions that I've always asked when I've gone through the teachings. And one reason why, when I finished doing all my studies in Buddhist philosophy in Tibetan Buddhism, I then looked at the early teachings of Theravada and the early teachings of Buddhism because I wanted to see, I don't just want to stick to one school of Buddhism. I wanted to see, okay, what are the other guys saying and what is the difference between the two? And also me being a Westerner, what does it mean to me? How relevant is it to me? Because remember, these are Asian teachings, and Buddhism moves from country to country, and as it's moved around the world, it's taken on the culture, and no more so than in Tibet. So then you have to look at that. I had to look at all of my teachings later on when I had the opportunity to sit and really meditate and take out all the cultural things and just see what I'm left, see what I've left with Buddha's teachings. This is what we need to do when we're going along a spiritual path. It's a slow process, but there's no rush. Steps, because if we take little baby steps, we're going to get somewhere. If we run, we're going to miss. You can walk up Everest slowly and take it all in and just look at the whole scenery and the whole beauty. Or you can go really fast and get to the top quick. But then when you've reached the top, you didn't see anything. You didn't take anything on board. So little baby steps along the way are fantastic for us to do. So these are the first three verses of Atisha's advice, and it's a great foundation for us to get ourselves as mentors, teachers. Once we have, then listen really carefully and question them. Don't think that, oh yeah, these are, special people. I better not ask them any question, because if you have a little doubt, and you leave that little doubt in your mind, it is just going to grow and grow and grow. So if you have doubts, then ask the question, what is this? Can you explain it more? It's so strong and you can't really get to understanding it. What I would say to you is then just put it to one side for a moment. Don't let it be the end of your spiritual path. Don't think, okay, now I've hit this brick wall. Put it to one side and then move along the path, but keep coming back to it. Because sometimes as we move along the path and as we get more and more teachings and our understanding becomes better and we've meditated on it and we've started to experience it, then when you look back, sometimes it's like, oh yeah, now I get it. So don't let a doubt, an obstacle stop you on the path. Carry on, but keep coming back to it and saying, do I understand it more now? So find a teacher, listen to the teachings, meditate on the teachings, just try to understand them, rip them apart, word by word. What does that mean? What does that mean? And also, when you're doing it, what does it mean to me? That's the important thing. What does it mean to you? What does it mean to your life now? How can that affect your life now? How can that make you a better person? That's what we want. We want to become awakened. We want to be a better person, not just for ourselves, but so we can then teach other people. We can help other people. But, until we've learned it ourselves, how can we help? If I've got terrible anger problems and somebody comes to me and asking me, what shall I do about anger? Then who am I to say? Because I've already got my anger problems. So, first of all, we need to work on ourselves. But when we're working on ourselves, keep in mind that we're working on ourselves for the betterment of all beings. So don't make Buddhism, don't make whatever spiritual path you want to go on, don't make it a selfish path, because that's going to get you nowhere. That is definitely you're going to hit a brick wall there if you're just being selfish. We're selfish enough as it is in our relative world, in our daily lives. We don't need to be selfish in our spiritual life. So always have it in mind when you're doing any practice, that you're doing it for the sake of all sentient beings, all mother sentient beings. And we'll talk about that in another session. So, implementing the teachings, listening to the teachings, getting good teachers. That's what we need to do. You get that. That is your foundation. That is the base. From there, you can start to grow. And then from next Sunday, we'll start to move along the teachings again. There are 45 verses, so we've done 3 verses today. So sometimes we'll do more than others, but I want to go slowly and I want you to fully understand each verse as we go along. So thank you so much for joining me. If you have any questions then, or any doubts, then please write them in the comments and I will get round to them sometime later on this evening. So have a great week ahead. Please stay safe. It's not over yet, unfortunately. So stay safe, keep your distance, wear those masks, whether governments say wear them or not. Be sensible about it. So thank you, and I'll see you all again next week. Namaste. If you enjoyed this video, then press the subscribe button now. And don't forget to share the video with your friends.